Dan Potthast has been a dairy farmer all his life. He learned from his dad on their small farm in southern Illinois. His father passed away when he was 16, and 2 years later, Dan purchased the farm they'd been leasing. He's still there today.
Our farm is 209 acres. About half of it was tillable when we purchased it. In 1986, I cleared 30 acres of timber, brush. That's now in MaxQ with most of everything else. We have 150 to 170 cows that we milk. On our farm, we raised corn. We raised alfalfa. We chopped wheat also. Weather dictated that I make some changes in my mind because it seemed that wheat was too hard to put up. You only have a few days to get this stuff put up right. Erosion was the main concern. Alfalfa was so expensive to put out, I felt, and you sprayed it for grass, you sprayed it for weevils, you sprayed it for potato leafhoppers, and God only knows what else, and plus you dealt with root rot and things like that. It didn't persist. All of these things thrown together made me decide that I had to make some changes someplace. I went to some grazing pasture days, talked to my seed guy and explained my problems and my concerns, and he basically recommended MaxQ, and we went from there. It was done at first strictly on a conservation basis, just to see if it would keep the ground in place on the hills, because I have a very hilly, rolling farm. I could buy hay if I had to, but I can't buy topsoil, and I was losing too much on the hillsides, I felt. So I made a change and started out baby steps, just a little bit. Every year we did a little more, to the point where just about everything that doesn't flood is now in MaxQ.
While Dan's primary concern was soil conservation, he also began to discover other benefits in MaxQ.
I had a custom operator come in with his big chopper and chop it, and it fed pretty well. I was fairly impressed. And when I tested it for protein, if we could get it put up right, it was reasonable. It was right there with some of the other stuff. The best thing is that winter is always a very big concern with winter kill in alfalfa. And the next year, the MaxQ was there, and the next year, and the next year, and it persisted. And that was my main concern when we started this. The grazing end of it was almost secondary. I mean, it was in the back of my mind. I wanted to graze it, but that wasn't my primary goal. My primary goal was to keep the topsoil in place, and we'll go from there. After I started feeding this stuff and figured out that, hey, I can actually make money, with this, at least as much as I was before, with a lot less aggravation, that was almost icing on the cake.
With his MaxQ field up and going, Potthast decided to further expand his grazing productivity with the addition of a clover.
The reason we started interseeding clover in the MaxQ was twofold. One was the clover will fixate nitrogen to feed the grass. The other one was that legumes do make milk, and it makes it a little more palatable for the cows. And what we've seen this year, because it's been a really odd year as far as the weather goes, is that the clover has really dominated. The grass, because it's been wet and cold, we had wonderful grass in the spring, but the clover that I sowed over the years has really taken off. The clover, in my mind, is a very important part of it. It makes it much more palatable. In my TMR mixer, it shows. The more clover in it, the more they scarf it down. One of the benefits of interseeding the clover in the MaxQ is I can basically feed all year long and get something off of because there are times in the year when the MaxQ goes dormant. That's just life, and the clover grows, so I actually can feed all year long on it.
And along with the extended grazing, he's also putting up plenty of hay for the winter.
I felt it was very important. On my limited acres, I needed to get as much bang for my buck as I could, so I put it up conventionally, 2-3 cuttings, and then stockpile it for winter grazing.
For Dan Potthast, Pennington's MaxQ has been a welcome addition to his grazing program.
MaxQ has given me the most bang for my buck. It grows when I've got water. It persists when I don't have water. It's always there waiting for fertilizer and water, and that's all it needs. Since I've sowed the first stand of MaxQ, we've had every weather extreme I think you can imagine. 2007, we had a horrible drought. 2008, it was the exact polar opposite. This year has been a completely different story, and it's been there through the whole thing. And I've watched a lot of alfalfa stands take a terrible beating through this whole thing. It's persisted. It's done well. I can only go by my own experience But in my heart, I believe that what Pennington's doing is something that would help other people also. I really do. That's important. I don't have 1,000 acres. I'm just a little guy trying to make a living. And Pennington treats me like they treat everybody else. I'm just as important as the guys that do have 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres or whatever. My opinion seems to matter to Pennington, and that's important to me. That's why I do business with them.
Pennington, come grow with us.